There she blows, the old scourge. Technology off the port bow. That's right, you're listening to Technology Blows, the podcast where we sail into the international waters of the internet to verbally harpoon the Moby Dick of pointless software. I'm your host, extremely online troglodyte Dan Sliman, and please help me welcome my guest for today's episode, digital strategy consultant and my former boss, Dana Vannen Anderson. Dana, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Is this where we give you your performance review? Because you were kind of, a difficult person to manage. Actually, I think it was the other way around.
I'm not an...
I think I learned more from you than I could ever help you, but it was really a joy to work together. So.
I can teach my boss things. I am not very good at listening to instructions.
Yeah.
So thanks for warning all potential employers off of me.
No. I would say I would give you a glowing review in a heartbeat. You know it. So yeah, no, a great pleasure to collaborate with you.
Thank you, Dana.
The deep thinker, Dan Sliman. So.
Yeah. It was a collaboration, exactly. That's how I prefer to think of it. We invented the Internet of Things together.
We did. No one ever thought of it before. Here we are. And IoT has been so successful. Speaking of technology that sucks.
That's so. Yeah, everybody knows IoT. Before we showed up, the only people could be on the internet. And one day I said to you, I remember this, I said to you, what if the coffee pot in our office could post on Slashdot?
Exactly. And what could happen?
And the rest is history.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. So, and look, here we are.
Although you can buy a printer that will print your face on toast. So that's great. So
that's
speaking of technology,
finally, humanity is saved. Dana, in your storied career, did you ever use a program called Microsoft Office?
In fact, I did. In fact, I still use it.
That's great.
Lucky me. Yeah.
Oh, really? 365 days a year?
365 days a year. Although I have something to say about that. I have something to say about that later, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, okay, we're going to be talking about Microsoft Office for an hour and a half, so I'm sure you'll get a chance.
That's great.
Yeah, it's great. I know you're psyched. In particular, mostly what we're going to be talking about is a little googly-eyed fastener who I think stole all of our hearts back in the tender year of 1998. Clippy.
Yeah, good old Clippy.
Clippy. Everybody knows Clippy. Now, but when I talk about technology on this show, I usually like to start with like a history of how humans solved that relevant problem that thing now solves through history before that thing existed. Yeah. But in this case, it's really hard to do because I think the problem Clippy was designed to solve is pretty ill-defined. Like Clippy was kind of popped onto the scene. We really didn't know what he was supposed to be for, and so what can you really point to as a history of the invention? You might say that Clippy was invented to help with discoverability, like the difficulty of finding important features of a software tool. But that's a very new problem. Like it hasn't been very long since we invented tools complex enough to have capabilities that the user is not aware of immediately by looking at the tool, right?
Yeah, no, and that's, if you look at Microsoft Bob and you look at Clippy, these were attempts at trying to make technology more accessible, but in a slightly misguided way, a failed hypothesis, if you will. So
yes. Yeah, I like to look at it that way. It was an experiment. It wasn't a failed experiment. It was an experiment that produced a negative result. And we learned something about whether people like to have paper clips blinking at them all day while they're trying to write a fucking letter.
That's right. Yeah. And the answer would be no.
Yeah. I think the answer is I do not think that they do. No. I I think people generally use software to accomplish their goals, and they get better at doing that over time as they develop their skills and knowledge organically. They generally don't need a paperclip squawking at them all day. you can point to a lot of computer assistants in sci-fi as precursors to Clippy. The Asimov's robot books leap to mind. Those were kind of pre-Clippies, the robots in those. HAL 9000, of course, from 2001: A Space Odyssey. But those are not actual precursors to Clippy, right? Those are fictional. And also, when those things appear in sci-fi, they're usually conceived of as general purpose assistants that can understand arbitrary tasks and go do those things, which is not what Clippy is or was ever imagined to be. If I sound distracted, Dana has a very cute cat in her lap.
Where that happens.
Your
That's
little assistant who comes in and
yes.
and jumps
That's
into whatever
my
you're trying to do in the
anti-work.
middle of.
That's my anti-productivity assistant. Its job is to keep me from being productive at work. So almost without exception. But it's cute
Yeah,
and makes me feel good. So
yeah,
yeah,
you're doing a great job, cat.
yeah. Thanks. Here comes a cat again because one pass is not enough. So okay, we're gonna go over here now.
we kind of reinvented cats. That was sort of the precursor to Clippy, if you want to be technical about it.
Sure. Yeah.
um yeah, generally the ones in sci-fi also uh are generally evil, and they try to kill you, which
Yeah.
is say what you want about Clippy. He never sucker punched me and then tried to gouge my eyes out in an alleyway behind a Chinese market like Leon Kowalski in Blade Runner.
Well, the thing about Clippy is, and this is one of the paradoxes that exists in trying to make technology accessible, or trying to anthropomorphize technology, the idea that it's going to be helpful. And it's a tricky business. There's a whole thing about, like, if a robot is too smiley, you want to punch it in the face. But if it's mean looking, then you're afraid of it. And this in between is hard to find. And Clippy, I had a very mixed relationship with Clippy because Clippy would pop up like do you ever have that eager roommate that was going to help you with something, but doing it in all the wrong ways? Like, hey, let me help you move your TV. And then it grabs it
Yep,
and yanks it off the shelf and drops it face down on the floor. And you go, thanks, but I don't really need your help right
yep,
now.
I know,
Let me
Jeff.
help. Yes, okay. Sorry, Jeff. But yeah, we all have that overly eager, helpful person that just seemingly does everything wrong. And that was kind of Clippy. But weirdly, I have this thing. I mean,
Yeah.
they studied all these different forms, and they figured this was the most likable and the most trustworthy form of an object as researched.
Yeah.
But the issue was, Clippy was cute, but he was useless, and so that combination of cute and useless is and annoying is not really a good one. But I have to tell you, for me personally, I am
Again,
such
cats.
I have too much empathy. So what happens is that I would look at Clippy and go, you're really annoying and you're really unhelpful, but I just can't. Because when you closed him, he got a little sad, then he went poof. And I always felt a little bad about that. So I would just
Mm,
like leave him there because I didn't want to
yeah.
disappoint Clippy. So that's how
I want him to think he's
that's why I
doing a
go to
good job.
therapy, I
Yeah.
guess.
So in 1987, Apple produced this promotional video called the Apple Knowledge Navigator. Are you familiar with this?
Vaguely. Yeah.
It was made for a keynote being given by John Sculley, who was then the
Oh yeah.
CEO of
I
Apple.
I've seen this
And it's
video.
this
Yeah.
little 6 minute. Yeah, you remember this.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's like a professor, and he's in his office, and there's classical music playing, of course, because he's a professor. And this little dude shows up on his computer screen, and he helps the professor go through his daily agenda, and then he starts asking it to help him with different tasks. So things like pull up all the news articles I haven't read yet, and pull up a forest coverage map of Brazil. Call my friend Jill.
Mhm.
And this took place in 2011, so they were very optimistic about when this technology might be possible to build. Uh, and of course, Apple never built it. Even now, we couldn't build something like this with perfect context acquisition like this thing in the movie had. But it was this Knowledge Navigator movie was seen by a lot of industry people, and it gave the impression that computer technology was approaching this level of sophistication.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and we're a long
And
ways
then a
from
few
that.
years after, go ahead.
Oh, I was going
Yeah,
to
we
say,
just have not got there. I mean, ChatGPT is a way far away.
uh, way far away, would you say?
I, well, maybe you might not be convinced, but I think it's still I think ChatGPT is still pretty far from being able to intuit and to model enough of our goal system that without very precise instructions as to how to perform a task, it
Yeah,
can it can perform the right task.
yeah. I mean, I think it's all relative. I mean,
Um,
I think it's
which is what which is Apple
the
Knowledge Navigator was just like boop, 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 boop.
yeah. I mean that is true. However, I would contend that it's gotten pretty good. I mean, I use it every day as part of my job, and it
Yeah,
is able to do some pretty incredible things. But to your point, you have to
yeah.
prompt it to get what you want. It's computers are terribly well. The problem is humans are not rational, and we're emotional creatures. So it's going to be a while until you have that level of context. That what you're asking for is this. What we really need to do is
Yes.
go out and have a scotch or whatever. But which would be kind of a cool like let's just go out and go to the bar. Like oh, okay, whatever. Um, but
Yeah,
but
I
but
want to drink a scotch with ChatGPT for sure.
I think what would be better have a drinking buddy. But I do think the context. I mean, we're gaining on it. And I think when you look at systems, and I was just thinking about this earlier, like there are systems that can anticipate something, right? So if you look at MCAS, you look at stability systems on the Macs, right? It was designed to overcome essentially a built-in design flaw of a thrust line and center of gravity problem where it's going to be very helpful and help you not stall the airplane, which resulted in it guessing wrong because of sensor errors, which resulted in people dying, right? But it was trying to do the right thing. It just was poorly designed. And I feel like if you have a carefully crafted system that is designed to anticipate certain use cases, it can do it. But the general use case, to your point, is still extremely challenging.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think it it's well we'll talk about this, but the challenge of trying to predict what a person needs is hard enough without the um, without the handicap of having to gain all of your model, all of the inputs to your model of their mental state from interactions with the Microsoft Office UI. Right. All the only information you have is what they're clicking and what they're typing, which is nowhere even close to all the things that they could be telling you about what they want to be doing. Right.
And the truth is, if it had that context, it would seem really invasive. Like if it actually knew you were in a bad mood and
Oh
or
yeah,
that would be even creepier, right? It'd be like, oh, hold on a minute, like I'm going to
that would
decide
be
because
even
then you're going to
worse.
feel that's it's a problem.
Get out of my head. Yeah. Um, so a few years after the Knowledge Navigator video, we start to get personal computers sold on the mass market. Like you could go to Best Buy or Circuit City, RIP, and buy a personal computer off the showroom floor. And one of the companies that was most successful at this was Packard Bell. I'm sure you remember Packard
Oh
Bell.
yeah.
So they had this thing on their that would come packaged with their computers called Packard Bell Navigator, which was a visual shell for Windows 3.1, and they started packaging it in 1993. And by visual shell, I mean it was like a user interface on top of the operating system that aimed to make the computer easier to use.
Yeah.
And it did this through the metaphor of a home.
Yeah. Right. This is like Bob was the same thing,
So
right? It's a AI
yeah,
it's a UI overlay. Yep.
but it's the yeah exactly.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
UI overlay like Bob, but it was prettier than Bob. It's like an interior of a house. It's like a kind of cluttered, but it's
Yeah.
very nice. It's sort of like a contemporary
Mhm.
minimalist design, um, open concept. I think they say it's definitely not baby proof as a father, I looked at this room, and there's a staircase in the middle of the room with no railing. So definitely definitely not good for babies. But so you would navigate to different functions of your computer by clicking on different objects in the house. If you want to run applications, you go to your bookshelf, and the bookshelf is
Yeah.
stocked with various applications represented by pictures of the application, right? There's an entertainment room for watching videos or listening to music. If you want to get on the World Wide Web, you just click on the Earth, which weirdly is you can see in the sky outside the window, which I guess means this house is on the moon.
It's very strange. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not to think about it too much. Uh, but pretty neat idea, I think. Um, as we know now, people adapted to the idea of a computer with programs on it very quickly, and this kind of like skeuomorphic mist-like experience where you click through a house was not really
Yeah.
necessary to get people to understand what was going on with their computer.
Yeah. And I think this always goes back to the mental model that you have when you're interacting with a system, right? Um, and what the interface
Yeah.
point is. And I think that's true about a car. It's true about an airplane. It's true about your cat. It's true about computers. You and I, we just want a prompt. Like, don't
Right.
get in my way. We don't want
I
a lot of
mean,
UI stuff. But when I think about like trying to teach, my dad, who was an engineer, learned on, IBM 360 doing Fortran, in the 1960s, but then when I had to try to teach
mhm,
him the complexity, trying to explain to him the layers and layers and layers of the system as a 90 something year old person, and then they would change the UI on him, and it would just completely blow up his
yeah,
mental model. So he was unable to, he would think that he understood what's happening because they've provided you this abstract interface, but that computers don't follow those kind of rules of the world. So what breaks down is same with the virtual reality stuff. It's a great idea, but when you get into the virtual world, they're trying to
totally.
emulate. It doesn't match. So then suddenly you have to learn another meta language to interact with something that's supposed to be natural, and it never works. It's
That's
heading
a
in the
great
wrong
point.
direction.
It
Yeah,
it's abstract, and nothing you can't map abstract uh, conceptual systems onto a concrete
right.
model like that in a way that is going to last longer than a couple of years, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But that didn't stop Microsoft. They came up with one of the most famous flops in the history of desktop software, Microsoft Bob. So Bob was very similar to Packard Bell Navigator, but it had more of like a cartoon aesthetic, and it included a guide in the form of a yellow dog named Rover, who would give you little tips in speech bubbles, and he would help you navigate your virtual home environment. He'd be like, "Hey, did you know there's a room over here where you can store your, books or whatever?"
I want to know why the dog always sounds like this, but they always do.
Oh yeah, that's a dog voice. Cats can have many different voices. Cats contain multitudes. Dogs are almost like.
Not entirely
um, but
inaccurate.
that's what they sound like. That's what they sound like. If you could make them talk, that's what they would sound like. Bob was universally panned in the press. The Washington Post called it sterile and lifeless. The New York Times said the characters were irritating, and the home design looked like the work of, quote, an aesthetically challenged sixth grader. Uh, and also, the system requirements for Bob were widely found to be way, way, way too steep. In other words, it was slow as balls.
That's a
Um,
problem.
it's a problem, yeah. If it's going to be the main way people interact with your computer, and computers are already slow anyway, uh, the marketing manager. This is interesting. Do you know who was the like main marketing manager for the Microsoft Bob project?
Uh,
Her name was Melinda French,
how about
which
that?
who you may know as
Yes,
Melinda Gates,
that's right.
the future ex-wife of Bill Gates.
Amazing.
I don't know if that had anything to do with how this garbage product ended up making it to market, but it's a fact. only sold about 58,000 copies and was discontinued within less than 6 months of its initial release.
which is I'm surprised it's that number, but you know, probably, half those are probably
I mean,
random people not knowing what they're buying, or they packaged it with other things, right?
yeah, or people buying it for their grand or for their father, for their dad who doesn't know computers, right? Oh, this will help.
Yep.
So Clippy has DNA from a few different currents of thought that were coursing through Microsoft in the early 1990s. They were the Microsoft was most of the people at Microsoft would have seen the Apple Knowledge Navigator video. They'd be aware of Packard Bell Navigator. They would know about Bob because they everybody was I got a lot of lectures about Bob,
Mm.
and one of the other things going on at Microsoft was this concept called CASA. This is all caps. It stands for Computers Are Social Actors. So this is a theory and research paradigm pioneered by Stanford researcher Clifford Nass. And basically, CASA holds that humans interact with computers using much of the same psychological machinery that we use to interact with other humans. So we basically treat humans like they're people when we interact with them. And this theory has kind of fallen by the wayside in of late because it turns out to not be very robust against changes in technology, but they did a pretty cool experiment in 1994 in their that's reported in their 1994 paper by Cliff Nass, and I'm going to describe the experiment. So a study participant comes in, they sit down at the computer, which teaches them like 25 to 30 little facts, like little random factoids about mass media, social customs, relationships, stuff like that. Uh, and then the computer gives the participant a test on those facts. So they answer 15 multiple choice questions, ostensibly to test their recall of the facts. Finally, and this is the only part that matters, all the fact memorization and test taking is just a smokescreen. Psychologists love this shit where they come in and you're supposed to do one thing and it has nothing to do with what they're actually testing.
Of course.
They love tricking people. I guess that's how you get into psychology. To be a gaslighter
Right.
to make it in this field. So in the final step, participants in one randomly selected group were asked to stand up and move to a different computer. The rest of the participants stayed at the computer on which they had taken the test. And all the participants in both groups were asked to evaluate how the computerized testing session had gone. Like they were given a little questionnaire, how did the computer perform? Did the computer do a good job? So half the participants were evaluating the job performance of the computer they were using that they had just given them the test, and the other half were evaluating a separate computer. And they found so what they found was that the participants gave significantly better performance reviews to the computer that had just been given that they had a quote relationship with
Hmm.
than when they were asked by the neutral computer. And so hence Nass says people are polite to computers in the same way they're polite to other humans.
I think it's the wrong conclusion. Uh, I think this is a case of so they did an experiment where they gave a person a rock. They said, "We want you to carry this rock around." They just give you a rock. It's a rock, any rock, doesn't matter what it is. And then they
Yeah,
would
I'm familiar with
ask
rocks.
you
Yeah,
for the rock back. They make you carry it around, and so you carry it around for a minute, and they'd say, "Give me the rock back," and they go, "Here, it's a rock. It's a rock." In 5 minutes, then an hour, and
sure.
but by the end of the day, they'd say, "Give me the rock," and they go, "No, this is my rock." So people will get attached to a completely inanimate object just because it's present with them, and that attachment is why when
Right.
you're cleaning out your closet, you shouldn't touch the objects. That you're supposed to do is have a friend come over, and you sit in a lawn chair because the minute you touch an object, that you become attached to it, and so although it's I think there's just a couple of steps they probably missed where they're like, therefore it's the computer and interacting,
Hmm.
but I think there's a more fundamental attachment going on, and I do think people get attached to screensavers. Everybody would show up. I mean, they all have their favorite
right.
custom color screens and backgrounds, and they're going to make it their own, right? And then they become attached, but for no reason other than it's familiar, right? It doesn't actually. So I think it's
Yeah,
which I think led them down the wrong path in terms of where they were headed. Um, at least in my opinion,
yeah.
being a being an
I think you're
armchair
right. I
psychologist that
mean,
I am, an expert in all things. So
there's well, I can back you up because there is evidence. There was a paper published a couple years ago uh, where they tried to reproduce this experiment, and it can't be reproduced anymore. You can't. People
yeah,
don't treat computers this way anymore.
yeah, they attach
Uh,
differently.
right. So they attach differently to it, or they're familiar enough with computers that the idea that nobody makes the association of the computer act that the computer's actually testing them, right? They're being tested by software which is running somewhere else, or something like that.
Hmm.
But for the story of Clippy, it doesn't matter so much whether the Casa theory is correct. What matters is that the boys over at Microsoft Research thought it was correct, and they hired Clifford Nass and his partner Byron Reeves to consult on an exciting new cutting edge project they were working on, which would become known as Office Assistant. Dun dun dun. Now, meanwhile, elsewhere at Microsoft Research, Eric Horvitz and his team were stuck into a different project called Lumiere. And yes, that's spelled the same as the horny French candlestick from Disney's Beauty and the Beast. But unlike its namesake, and unlike The Office Assistant, the Lumiere project was not a helpful anthropomorphic cartoon. It was a system for giving a software user context appropriate suggestions or
Hmm.
tips that would help them discover easy ways to achieve their goals. So, like, you're using Excel, you're trying to create a chart, but you're having a little trouble. Maybe you can't find get it to find the data points in the right column or whatever. And the box pops up that's like, it looks like you're trying to make a chart. Would you like some help with that? Dun dun dun. I don't think this is a crazy idea. This could help people.
Yeah,
Um,
the issue will be what is the closed loop adaptive system behind it, and I think that's where it fell down because they didn't have the ability to create a closed loop. They also didn't have the ability to do a massively parallel regression with all users where it would say, did I get it right?
right.
Yes, no, but do that. So I think they try to figure out, okay, we're going to guess at the context that people have without any context. So it's a bit of a problem.
That's right. They gave it their all. I recommend reading the paper. It's on Arxiv for
Yeah.
free. It's really fascinating, and I think it predicts a lot of the problems that we have with artificial intelligence
Mhm.
assistants today. They were trying to infer what you know uh, the user doesn't tell Excel what they're trying to do. They just try to do it. And even if they were telling it, like Excel, it was 1994, that Excel can't interpret natural language, and using it to model a person's goals is really hard. We're just starting to be able to do things like that with massively parallel modeling techniques in the last couple of years. 15 Moore's law doublings later.
Yeah. I mean, that would have made it a lot better if they just said, or, just ask. Otherwise, it's just assuming, well, you're trying to make a chart. And you're like, no, that's not what I'm doing.
That's
So,
right. And people
I mean,
and they tried it. They tried to do it because they wanted to know, well, can you, like, we're trying to build a computer system that can infer from somebody's actions in Microsoft Excel what they're trying to do. Can humans even do that? They did a Wizard of Oz experiment where a user was given a set of spreadsheet tasks to perform, and then a group of Excel experts in a different room would be watching everything the user did on their screen and like reading all their keystrokes, and they'd try to give helpful advice, which would appear in a dialog box, looking like a computer was offering the advice, but it was actually coming from a person. Uh, and the experts couldn't do it either.
it sounds incredibly
They could
annoying,
sometimes
right?
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but why don't, I mean,
It's like
again,
the
I
office
think,
IT guy looking over your shoulder.
yeah. the help for the help. Hi, I'm from IT. I'm here to help. You can go
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
Thank you very much. No, it's just an interesting kind of mental model. I think it was reflective of kind of the time of this idea that I don't know. I think even now when you look at adaptive systems and you look at agentic agents and you look at even just LLMs and how they work, they're better, but you have to. But the human has to participate. Like I think this without context, trying
right.
to infer, I think is a. I agree with you. It's a fool's errand, and which they found out the hard way.
Yeah, it was even they did, but it was even more. I mean, at least they didn't go too far with it. The experts would even offer advice. They would misunderstand what the user was trying to do, give some advice, and then they like, oh, did you know about this feature? And then the user would be like, oh, okay, let me read up on that feature, let me try that out. And they would try, even if it was totally irrelevant what they were actually trying to do. Now they were following the advice that they had been given incorrectly by the expert, was actually making people's productivity worse.
Yeah, I think it's
So
just
inauspicious.
yeah. I think it's just I think it was an interesting time. I think the other thing that from what I could tell, there's the underlying engine, which is actually maybe had some potential, but I think there was the annoyance factor. So when they were talking about it, it's like people were just irritated. They killed the messenger. They killed Clippy when in fact it was the engine behind it
Yeah,
that was the problem. So I feel Clippy was
yeah.
unfairly persecuted and castigated. So
I
I
got
think
nothing against cartoon paper
yeah,
clips in general.
right.
I'm not
I think
biased against cartoon paper clips.
Clippy for president. Let's go. Come on. You know, how can I help you
I
today?
mean, couldn't do
It
worse.
looks like you're trying to violate my First Amendment rights. I
Would you? It seems like you're trying to make a website for your Antifa chapter. Would you
right,
like to
exactly. We're
be
trying to subvert the
secretly
government.
renditioned to a Panamanian prison?
We have assistance on the way. Yeah, let's hope that doesn't happen.
It is a little bit authoritarian, Clippy, but
Oh,
he's not too bad. Yeah,
maybe he should have said.
Jesus.
Maybe he should have said,
Uh,
you're working on a spreadsheet, right?" And then he'd be like, no. It's like, try again. You're working on, and he'd be like a bully, and be like, okay. Somebody come over and like, why are you building this? Well, Clippy made me do it. It's like, yeah, I think
yeah, I mean
that
that's a lot of people are doing that now. They're blaming ChatGPT for
right.
well, this is what the AI told me to do.
It's a tough thing. I think about my own kids, trying to explain. I mean, they get it, but the critical thinking and the notion that just because something that works very neat and tidy and written out in a nice grammatically correct way doesn't mean in any way that it has any meaning or it's correct. And
That's right.
but that differentiation and that critical thinking is it's something that us old codgers, back in the day, you know, but it becomes more difficult, I think, with more
Yeah,
information, and then being able to differentiate between good advice and bad advice becomes more difficult. Because where do
yeah.
you
We're
go for that?
evolutionarily wired
Yeah,
to see something that looks like it was made by a person and associate a high information value
that's right.
content with that
Yeah.
thing, and we've figured out how to short circuit that. So great.
Yay! Hooray, humanity!
uh
Good job. Good job.
Hooray, we did it, everyone. uh so this brings us to the Microsoft Office Assistant, which is a feature that was ultimately released would ultimately be released with Microsoft Office 97, and which we've all come to know as Clippy. So I'm going to use the word Clippy interchangeably with Microsoft Office Assistant, mostly. Um, so the Office Assistant was to be a virtual assistant that would appear on the screen while you're using Microsoft Office and offer helpful advice to the user. And it would also act as an interface to the Office help system. Clippy, or actually Clip It, as he was originally named, that
Hmm.
didn't stick, was actually one of about 250 different character concepts that were considered as the face of the office assistant. Clippy himself was designed by graphic designer Kevin Atterbury, who had previously done some work on Bob. Um, Fun fact: Atterbury designed Clippy on a Mac. Uh, Now, Clippy was far from universally loved within Microsoft. There was a lot of criticism going around internally. Steven Sinofsky, who was a program manager on Office starting in 1994, has written that Clippy was referred to during development as TFC, which stood for the fucking clown.
You're not off to a good start if that's your nickname. I mean, people do. I remember people used to use that as your, instead of Dan, somebody used to call you that at the office, but I didn't know what it stood
Yeah,
for. So.
but that's what I was trying to construct a
I think it
persona.
was, I
Um,
think it was TFA actually, not TFC. So.
I mean, I'm comfortable with that. So if I understand correctly, actually, Bill Gates was the one who started calling it clown. But he hated Clippy effusively. Um, but then again, it's said that Bill Gates hates most ideas that people have effusively. He's like he's a very picky boss. Roz Ho, a longtime Microsoft product manager, spoke in one interview about some of the focus groups that were done on the Office Assistant to try to determine how users would feel about the different characters. Ho says, quote, most of the women in the focus group thought the characters were too male and that they were leering at them. So we're sitting in a conference room. There's me and I think like 11 or 12 guys, and we're going through the results. And they said, I don't see it. I just don't know what they're talking about. And I said, guys, look, I'm a woman, and I'm going to tell you these animated characters are male looking. But of course, none of them listened to her, and they shipped it anyway, which surprises no one.
What are the odds? I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, I know.
That's a
I
whole
know.
nother
That's so
podcast,
crazy.
but yeah, that's a whole nother podcast, but yeah.
Yeah. It yeah, we don't have time. We don't have time to get into all that. But it's if there's one
I have
woman in the
an
room,
opinion or two on
you should
that
be shouldn't
particular
you not be
topic,
paying
but
more attention to what she thinks? Yeah. Yeah.
you'd
And
think.
hmm, hmm. Well, like I said, Clippy was the default character in Office Assistant, but there were other characters. So we had Clippy, and we had this bouncing red ball from Microsoft Bob, which is cute. Uh, we got two cats, two dogs. One of the cats is like abstract, and one of the cats is cartoonish. There's a wizard. There's William Shakespeare. There's Einstein. There's a picture of the Earth. You could have any number of these little guys, but they didn't have different characters. They would all say the same exact things. So they were all equally fucking irritating. Do you
Hmm.
remember if you used Clippy by the default or you used one of these
I
special
think
ones?
I did try a few other. It's funny, again, I think it's funny people's reactions to these things with the faces on them. And for me, um, I like things with faces on them. I have a problem with that. I can't even, if I have like something with a face
Some of
on it,
my
I
best
can't throw
friends
it
have
away.
faces on them.
Right, exactly. What happens? But I think what's interesting is what would be an interesting experiment would have been if the character was different, if people would have had the same reaction. But
Hmm.
I'd be curious, and I do think Clippy was a strange thing because it's what is it exactly, and I think that's why they picked it. But I think um,
Yeah.
he, but
It
yeah,
feels like it was
I tried a
picked.
few. I think I remember. I like that kind of super abstract cat. I don't remember that one, but I think I used like the wizard. But I think the problem
Mm,
is it's a bit of an Einstein. Einstein would be a bit of an overreach, I think, just by a little bit.
I see. I used Einstein, and it was very disappointing. It was not anything like Einstein. I mean, it does feel like Clippy was picked as a like because he's neutral and meaningless, and
Yeah.
he doesn't carry any connotations for anyone.
And you keep saying
Which is what
he,
happens
so
when you
clearly he's a he because you keep saying
yeah
he. You're not saying they and not
technically
she.
so technically the office assistant characters did not have any gender, and there was a lot of discussion around this in Microsoft at the time. um, but we didn't know about singular they yet. And also, as soon as Clippy was launched, first of all, Rosho was right, they all do kind of look male. And we associate somebody giving you help that you didn't ask for with maleness. uh, but also, like, as soon as it was launched and people started talking, there started being discourse about Clippy. Everybody used he. Nobody even thought twice about it.
Be like instead of mansplained, it'd be like clip splained, I guess, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Clippy, yeah. So Clippy was the default. He became synonymous with the Office Assistant, and he was associated forever in our collective memory with that iconic line. It looks like you're trying to write a letter, which is what Clippy says if you open up Office 97 and type the word "dear." I hate this shit. I hate shit like this.
Yes, all I could do is
It's like,
sigh.
don't.
Yes,
Yeah, I know. Get out of my. Don't try to represent. You're a tool. Don't try to guess what I'm trying to do. I will use you to do the thing I'm trying to do.
right.
So Clippy was always there on the screen. He would do cute little animations. You could, like, he would tap the screen sometimes with his tail,
Hmm.
but he'd blink. He'd like fold himself into fun little shapes. You could ask him direct questions, and he'd search the help files. If you typed
Hmm.
your question into he would like search the help file for your search terms, and then he would also try to guess what you're trying to do and offer help.
Hmm.
But I never really experienced it that way. It really seemed like he just had rote situations where he'd pop up
Hmm.
and tell you something that was irrelevant to what you're trying to do. Um,
He was
in
predictably
the
wrong.
in
That's what I would say.
he was
Yes.
That's a great way to put it. They tried to advance with the Lumiere project. They tried to make him. They tried to build some prediction into him, where they talk a lot in the paper about how they were using Bayesian networks to try to guess what the user might need help with. They even went so far as to use dynamic Bayesian networks to try to keep up with changes in the user's goals over time,
Hmm.
which is really, really hard if all the input that you have is with their interface interactions.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was all scrapped for Clippy. They didn't use any of that shit.
Yeah, they were missing asking the user what they wanted. It's like, oh,
Exactly.
just do it the other way around, and it's going to work out a lot better. But I think it's just an overreach
Yeah.
on, yeah,
Really interesting research project that shouldn't
yeah.
have gotten this far into productionization. Um,
Just
the
think of those
Lumiere paper.
management meetings. Just think about like the demos. I mean, they'd have to like rig the demo. And now I'm going to write a letter,
Yep.
dear. See? It knows I'm going to write a letter. I mean, but I wonder if they did any.
Oh,
Do you
how
think
did
they
it
did
do that?
any? Did they did any do any UAT or any system usability scoring? Do you think they actually put it in front of a user before they deployed it and check out the sus score, which probably was like negative 100? I mean, do you think they did any of that? Like they probably. I just can't imagine they did because
I
it seems like they would have figured out this is not working sooner.
I know they tested the character designs on groups of users, but I
Yeah.
don't know if they tested the usability of it with actual, like, users using the product, because uh, I think they rushed. It was rushed to
Yeah.
market a little bit, and also what they didn't. If they had done that, they probably would have found that it was not. They should not do this.
But they had go fever. They were going to do it. I think
Right?
they just became invested in this as an idea, and even though it was a bad idea, they're gonna keep
They wanted
going.
to be
But
the first. They had to be the first to do everything,
yeah,
even if it wasn't a good, if
and I don't think the concept of fail fast was part of the conversation then either, which was we know this now.
that's a
Um,
great point.
and I think things like lean startup and using these kinds of thoughts to just assume you don't know until you do is a different rejection of the null
Hmm.
hypothesis sort of stuff is I think they're just that was the old days of we know what needs to be
That's a
done
great point.
and we're going to do it. But it's
the
yeah,
history of this project is definitely a history of people thinking they know things that they don't
yeah,
actually know. So I think you're right.
yeah.
Um, the Lumiere paper also talks about how they were gonna have a system that would try to assess not just what help you needed, but whether you needed help in the given moment. So they would the prototype was the prototype was built on like a user competency profile that would be stored in the system registry. Um, that did not make it into Office Assistant. The prototype included a volume slider that controlled the threshold for how loud, how often Clippy should offer help. That did not make it into Office Assistant. He would disappear. The Lumiere dialogue would disappear after a certain amount of time, and also apologize for distracting you if its help had not been useful. That was scrapped. Yeah, it's kind of funny if you read the paper how much it complains about the changes made in implementing. There's like several paragraphs that are just like, we did all this in our research, and Microsoft didn't use any of that in Clippy.
So did they explain why that happened, or do we not know that? Why they
Not
didn't
really. I
include?
don't think we have a lot of information on
Nobody
that, but
really
I would
knows.
imagine it's production pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was if they had to get it. They had. Um, I think
We're
they
gonna
were
get it out the
attached. They
door,
were
damn
really
it.
attached to this Casa idea, and they had to get it out the door. Yeah. And a lot of this stuff that they said they could do, like a lot of these recommend, it was academic, it was a Microsoft research, like very very forward looking type research, and a lot of this stuff was like impossible then and hard
Yeah.
even now.
Right.
um yeah, so anyway, that's why Clippy asks you if you need help writing a letter, even if you've already written 99 letters and said you didn't need help.
Right.
So Office 97 shipped with Clippy always on, always watching, always listening, and no way to turn Clippy off. So I wanted to get a sense for what that felt like. So for the last two weeks, I've been doing all my work all day with a picture of Clippy on my second monitor. Just I it's just staring at me all day. And by day two, I was already feeling distinctly unsettled. I can't wait to get rid of him when we're done recording this call. I feel like I can hear the blood rushing in my ears a little louder each time I make eye contact with him.
Hmm. Why do you think you had that visceral reaction? I mean, what did he ever do to you? Where's this anger coming from?
I don't think I would want you there on my second monitor just staring at me
Really?
all the
Oh,
time
come
either.
on.
I think it's just it's the feeling of being
All right, challenge
observed.
accepted. I'm gonna send you a picture, and then you gotta have it on your screen for 2 weeks.
Right. I'll give it a shot. You might. I mean, it would.
You
It
might
would.
show up to my house and strangle me after 2 weeks, which would be a tragedy, but
Yeah.
be a
You
worthy
know, uh,
experiment. Should I have, or I
I'll
could.
try. I'll try anything at this point because I'm real slow. Um, yeah. I think our historical memory of Clippy is that he was universally hated, like everybody hated Clippy. But that's not true. Many people
No,
liked Clippy. Yeah,
I
they
liked
thought he
him.
was cute.
I
Yeah,
liked him as a character. He just was incompetent. He was the incompetent helper that I'm like, oh, you tried to help.
yeah, yeah. He was exactly. Many people even thought he was helpful. Probably. I have found some reports of people saying, "Oh yeah, I Clippy helped me do XYZ the other day." Um,
It
but
helped
but
me
uh, but he was
help me do my taxes. Yeah, and help me with my investment
right.
advice. Yeah, no problem.
Clippy helped me steal copper from an abandoned building.
Perfect. That's great. And a good source of meth. Yeah, great.
Yeah, that's how they should have programmed that in. I think more people would have math.
They probably would have.
Uh,
Yeah.
the only way, so like one of the big problems was you could only really like Clippy as a beginner. He was as longtime Microsoft help find him helpful as a beginner.
Yeah.
As longtime Microsoft bigwig Chris Pratley put it in 2004, he was optimized for first use.
Hmm.
Like the first time, maybe he helps you. Next 100 times, it's like I know how to write a fucking letter.
Right.
Um, so while beginners and casual users might like Clippy, experts and power users fucking hated that condescending little know-it-all prick.
Right,
And
right.
experts are the tastemakers. We don't have critics. We don't really have like technological critics in our society. We have experts, and the experts decide what people's taste is going to be when it comes to technology. If you're not an expert, and all the columns and reviews you read about Clippy are about how he doesn't know how to Clippy doesn't deserve to live, and he ought to be melted down and turned into ball bearings, then you're not going to speak up in Clippy's defense, since you know less than the experts, and you probably also care less than the experts, right?
No, that's right.
But also he wasn't even that useful for beginner users, because if someone wants to accomplish something in Microsoft Word and they don't know how to do that, they'll generally learn it in the same way we've been learning how to use tools for the last 3 million years. They'll
Read the
ask someone
manual.
who knows, or
Oh, oh, I
well,
think read the manual, right?
well, yeah, I
Oh
mean,
no, ask
well,
someone. Yes.
yeah,
No, you look up
you'll
a
ask
video on it,
someone or you'll watch
right?
somebody. You may read the manual, but
I'm just joking.
people
I'm
don't
I'm a manual
usually.
reader, but
I've
that's
worked in
my own
office.
pathology. Yeah.
I'm of course, I love a manual. I read manuals front to back, absolutely. Um, but like that's not the default behavior
No,
for
I
humanity.
just want like the
Like
Baptist
Gladys in your
Hour
office is
form,
gonna,
and I want to have like the digital construct
yeah,
of how the UI is built and what the underlying data
right.
structures are. Then that's my manual.
Somebody understood this. Somebody understood this well enough to make it. So why not have that person tell me how to understand it? That's the purest way to get that knowledge. Um, in a 2003 research thesis by Luke Swartz entitled "Why People Hate the Paperclip: Labels, Appearance, Behavior, and Social Responses to User Interface Agents," I found a brief excerpt of an interview which went like this, and I'm filling in a couple blanks here, but you can find it online. Um, the interviewer says, "Think back to the last time you needed help. What happened? I grabbed Sam next door. What do you do for help when Sam's not around? I go to Elaine. And if she's not around, I'd ask somebody in IT. What if nobody is around? I'd wait." Right? So that's an example of somebody who was aware of Clippy and what Clippy was supposed to do, but didn't once consider asking him for help with anything.
Right,
Uh,
which makes
yeah,
sense.
which makes sense. Offices are for collaboration. Like we help each other achieve our goals, right?
That's right. Got to know
Um,
where to put the cover sheet on the TPS report. I mean, that's going to be you and that
yeah,
through your coworker, right?
Clippy can't tell you that. You can't tame Clippy on a corpus of all your Office wiki, right? You can't do that.
Well, you
Um,
probably can
so
now, but
beyond
you couldn't
optimism,
then.
now you can, right? Right.
But at the
Now
time,
Clippy
it
can
was
tell
an
you how to
overreach.
where to put the cover sheet on your TPS report.
Exactly. Very critical.
So beyond optimization for first use, another proposed explanation for why people hate Clippy is a concept called anthropomorphic dissonance.
Hmm.
Basically, Clippy acts like a person, and you're meant to treat him like a person. But unlike a person, he never learns anything about you or shows any evidence of caring about what you need or want.
That's a problem.
It's a problem if you're trying to make people think it's a person. To quote Clifford Nass, no matter how long users worked with Clippy, he never learned their names or preferences. Indeed, Clippy made it clear that he was not at all interested in getting to know them. If you think of Clippy as a person, of course he would evoke hatred and scorn. And he wrote a book, Clifford Nass. Microsoft asked him at some point about, hey, this paperclip guy you invented and that we spent millions of dollars on is pissing everyone off, and they want to poke his eyes out with his own pointy tail. What can you do to make him more likable? And to answer that question, he said, well, he needs to be able to learn people's habits and goals and reason about how to achieve those goals in different contexts, right?
Yes.
Basically, you need AI.
Yeah.
Um, right. And Microsoft didn't couldn't build AI in 1999, obviously, since Sam Altman was only 14 years old and hadn't invented the GPU yet. So Nass built Microsoft a new prototype of Clippy, where after offering advice, he would ask you whether his advice had been helpful, like the
Hmm.
Lumiere one did. And
That's right.
if you said no, Clippy would be like, "Oh, that makes me so mad." And then he would start writing an email to Microsoft support for you to complain.
Right.
And he would egg you on. He'd be like, "Come on, really let him at it. Like, really let him have it. Really fuck him up." Uh, Focus groups loved it.
I'll bet.
but Microsoft was not impressed. So they ended up just shit canning him. So that's the anthropomorphic dissonance theory, which I think holds a good amount of water.
Hmm.
But here's my pet theory. Clippy is effectively the voice of the developer. Clippy represents the dark fantasy of the software developer watching a user demo and banging their head against the wall as they see the user doing all the wrong things and
That's
being
right.
like, God damn it, now this idiot's trying to fix spell check findings by trying a dozen other incorrect spellings. How do they not know about the right click? You know,
Right.
if only I was there, I could explain everything this dumbass is doing wrong, and they'd thank me
Yes.
for it.
Which is why you tie up your developers and put duct tape around their head during these tests because
That's right. They can't be in the room. Yeah. So, because the voice of the developer is generally condescending, because the developer thinks we don't know our own ass from our dongle, and we need a cartoon dog to show us what a word processor does.
eh, present company excluded, of course.
Present company, of course. Yeah, we
We're
know we're
different.
very
We're different.
empathetic. You and I.
We're different. We're
Yeah,
different.
we're just built different. Yeah.
I guess for me,
Um.
I've become so humiliated by the sheer idiocy of the common person that I would have no expectation that anything they do would make any sense. So I've sort of, it's maybe
It's okay though.
depressive realism. I've just decided that people are idiots. So it
It's really
goes.
okay if users don't achieve their goals with your tool. Like it turns out, it doesn't matter that much in terms of how much software you can sell, whether it actually helps
Which
people do
is
things,
really depressing. Yes. Yeah.
which is really depressing.
Unless it's on a subscription, in which case it does matter. But that's a whole nother conversation. So
That's true. That's true. Different business model. Yeah. So I think Clippy was our first introduction as a society to an experience that has become so commonplace that we hardly even notice it anymore, which is the experience of a piece of software that you use daily suddenly becoming way shittier for no clear reason, and then being told there's nothing you can do about it. That's just the way it works now.
yes, that
Right.
is
In
the
19 That was a
experience.
new
Yep.
feeling in 1998 that nobody had
Yep.
experienced that yet in 1998. And so I think it explains a lot of our collective gag reflex at the introduction of Clippy.
Well, the thing about it is that I think Clippy represented a whole series of bad decisions by Microsoft at that time. I think there was a lot of excessive hubris, a lot of idea that we're going to be first, we're the best. And they just, I mean, because you just look at the steps along the way of where they went, and then they had kind of their moment where they realized, well, clearly this is, are we going to are we going to be Kodak and go out of business for the sake of
Mhm.
purity, or are we going to pivot, or IBM, or are we going to try to come to terms with really what's going on? Um, but that's a really, I think I think at that time, we're Microsoft, you're not, right? So not a
Right.
very good place. That's not a very good starting place for user and customer empathy, I'd say.
Yeah. I totally agree with you that they really had a heel turn somewhere around the early 2000s
Yeah.
where they started to understand this stuff much better.
Yeah.
But
Well,
like
and
back in
Apple,
1990s, they were one of the only
right?
ones doing this stuff
That's right.
anyway. So who would teach them?
But every organization kind of, it's just like the innovator's dilemma. I mean,
Yeah.
Apple had their own dogma, right? And their own way of being, and then they finally it broke, and then they had to make a big move because if they didn't, they
Right.
become extinct. And they figured out, okay, we need to. But yeah, I feel like Microsoft had to go through that same existential crisis in order to really understand what motivates people. And I think, yeah, it was changed since the late 1990s, which is, yeah, we're the developer, we know best, to hopefully we don't know shit. And so we need to find out, like, hopefully. I don't know
Yeah.
about you,
Yeah.
but,
The good ones.
yeah,
uh, yeah. Speaking of existential crises, basically as soon as Clippy launched, people were coming up with ways to destroy him. I found a reference in an old newspaper to a ZDNet. I couldn't find the actual article, but I found a reference to an article on ZDNet called "Die Clippy Die," which apparently contained instructions for getting rid of Clippy. I evidently was pretty complicated to do. I assume it involved like hand editing the registry and replacing DLL files and shit.
sounds Perfectly normal, perfectly healthy. Yes. Go and
That's
go muck around with those DLLs, and by all means, go and reg edit and just muck up some stuff.
you don't need
What could
those.
possibly go wrong?
Just back up your shit.
Just no problem, right?
Uh,
I watch my 90-year-old dad and
yeah.
reg edit. I'd be like, step away from the keyboard right now. You're doing
Oh,
brain
you can
surgery.
spell
You
words
don't
in
know
here
it.
like dead beef.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Microsoft, for their part, responded to the widespread animus toward Clippy as quickly as their primitive 20th century release cycle would allow. And in Office 2000, they added the ability to turn Clippy off permanently. And when I was a teen, we had Office in our house, and I switched. Like I said, I was using the Genius, which is a facsimile of Albert Einstein. I grew up in a house where there was a lot of respect for Einstein. My dad talked about Einstein all the time. It was kind of like Tony Soprano with Christopher Columbus. You could not badmouth Einstein in our house. So I had the Einstein version of Clippy. And in Office 2000, after you hid Office Assistant a few times, it would say, "You've hidden me several times now. Would you like to permanently turn me off or just hide me again?" Give you different options. And I don't know, it made me very sad. I felt like I did turn it off eventually, but I felt like I was strangling Einstein.
Right. Right. There's attachment for you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, NAS was not all wrong.
Yeah.
In 2001, with the release of Office XP, Microsoft took the further step of turning off Office Assistant by default. So you could turn it on if you wanted, but out of the box there would be no Clippy. But Clippy was already so famously hated by this point that Microsoft decided they couldn't just silently dispense with him. Instead, they made Clippy the centerpiece of their Office XP marketing campaign. They made a website written in Clippy's voice, which said, "My name is Clippy, and Office XP has me sweating and rusting. Why? Because Office XP works so easily that it's made office assistants like me useless, obsolete, and, I'm told, hideously unattractive."
Oh, that's harsh.
It is. I think, yeah. Oh, they went really hard on this. Like they had a whole website. They had a bunch of little short videos where Clippy was trying to find a new job. They made a flash game called Office XP, where the XP stood for extract paperclip, and you would
Hmm.
shoot like little
Yeah,
staples
and
at him.
right. And then
Uh,
there was the Gilbert
yeah,
Godfrey
yeah.
doing Clippy. I think they learned how to poke fun of themselves. And if everybody hates, then you might as well roll with it, right?
I I guess I think they misdiagnosed it. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you mentioned the Gilbert Godfrey. So here, let me regale you with this introduction from the Office XP launch on May 31st, 2001.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the launch of Office XP. And now, please welcome to the stage.
It looks like you're making an introduction.
Excuse me.
Would you like some help? I used to help people all day long. Remember how helpful I was? I was the most helpful talking paperclip ever. But now no one needs me. Office XP is too easy.
Yeah, I won't make you listen to that whole thing.
Thank you for saving me from
Um,
that. That's like cringe on cringe. That's like
it's so
that's the
cringe.
double cringe. That's the double cringe.
It was the
We
golden
need
age of
Steve Ballmer
Microsoft
running around.
cringe.
We just need Steve Ballmer out there running around dancing. And we got it all going,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Microsoft has lost this. They don't Microsoft doesn't make you cringe like this anymore. It's
They
too
don't. They
slick.
gotta. They should. Yeah. They're just. They should work on their cringe.
I think they did all these marketing stunts with Clippy because they thought it would get them some goodwill, probably at least partially because people hated Clippy so much. Then it would show people that like, oh, Microsoft gets it. They're in on the joke, right? And they thought maybe it might be cathartic for people to see this dipshit paperclip finally get punished.
I think they're punishing the wrong person. But yeah. Yeah.
I think you're very right. I mean, they're punishing everybody by making them watch this this horrible skit. It really misses the mark for me because what people hated about Clippy wasn't Clippy. It was Microsoft Office Assistant.
Hmm.
Like what you and I like. I think you and I, we don't hate Clippy. We hate that Office forces us to pretend that Clippy is a person in order to use their software.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I
unhelpful.
I don't want to shoot staples at the puppet. I want you to take the sock off your hand, right?
That's right.
So that should have been the end of it. Clippy wouldn't be totally removed from Office until the release of Office 2010, but he was off by default, and we didn't need to talk about him anymore, except on this podcast right now. But while Clippy may be gone, he's far from forgotten. He lives on, as all great tragic heroes do, in memes. One of my favorite Clippy memes to post is, "It looks like you're trying to be funny. Would you like some help with that?"
Yes. I'm gonna have to use though. I'm gonna integrate Clippy into all my presentations from now on. I'm gonna have a little Clippy in there somewhere,
You
just in
should.
your honor. Yeah, yeah. That little Easter egg. Yeah.
That's I can't wait to see him. I love your presentation, Dana. Um, there are many ways. There's lots of memes also of Clippy trying to help you commit suicide, which is very prescient given the very sad ChatGPT stories we've all read.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's one famous
Yes.
meme of pregnant Clippy, where a piece of paper stuck through his midsection acts as the pregnant belly. And if you have very specific needs, then you can download the erotic novella Conquered by Clippy for $2.99 on Kindle.
Nice. I think I'll skip that one, but you can let me know how it turns out.
Yeah,
If you can give me a little Goodreads review of that, post that, I'd appreciate that. We should
I
go
get the
look to see
impression
if
it's
there
not
is a
very
good.
good.
We should figure out if
Oh
there's a
yeah, let's
Goodreads
go. Let me go check that out.
because that would be
Goodreads
really hilarious. Because that could be a very
Conquered
hilarious review.
by Clippy. It's on Goodreads. It has 2.32 stars.
Wow, who knew?
Uh, let's see. Are there any actual reviews that people have written?
I think you need to write one. If there's
Uh,
anybody that could write a good review of this particular novella, it would be you, Dan. I think it's your mission.
there are some there are some reviews, but they're disgusting. I'm not going to read them on the podcast.
All right.
Woof.
Well, for everyone's amusement, they can go read those. And I'll bet
Yeah. Go check those out. Maybe I'll put them on. I'll put them on my
that's
TikTok.
actually making you
Um,
blush, which means it's got to be pretty bad. So,
yeah. Now, I don't think it's reaching to trace the legacy of Clippy through to Apple's Siri and Amazon's Alexa and Microsoft's
mhm,
Cortana,
right.
all the way to ChatGPT and all other modern AI assistants. They all have the same sort of. I find they all have the same sort of condescending tone, the same bland point of viewlessness.
Mhm.
And Clippy was really where the tech industry first decided that's what computerized assistants should be like.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, going back to, uh, life imitating art. I think people in their mind back in the sci-fi and Isaac Asimov and, these other folks, they had a certain envisioned future and they're just gonna, darn it, this is the way it's gonna be. It's gonna be a human-like interaction.
Right.
For some reason, I see this a lot where, like, why does a robot have to look like a human? Because
Mhm.
it kind of doesn't make any sense. Humans are kind of stupidly designed. There's probably a lot of other shapes that make a lot more sense. But if a robot looked like a giant robotic spider, which probably would be a better shape, it would terrify everybody, right? So, but it is interesting that
Yeah, that would
it's the
kick ass
hammer
though.
looking
Yeah, but
for a
yeah,
nail. Yeah.
right. Well, when you think about if you want computers, if you want people to think of computers as helping them, right? Then what's the most helpful thing in people's experience is another human who's willing to help them, right? So that people think that that's what we want out of it, but I
Right.
don't even think it is. It's my contention that we don't even want computers to help. At least I don't want computers to help me. I want them to be useful for doing the things I want to do, right? But helping implies some sort of active role in understanding my goals and helping me. I don't want computers to do that.
Well, there's a difference between assist and help. Assisting implies augmenting what the user is trying to do. Help implies I know better. It's like there's
Right.
an ego in there, right? And we don't want ego in our assistants that
Absolutely not.
that claim to know more than we do. That's really irritating.
I like to know more than we do and know zero.
I mean, we all
I
deal
work
with that in our daily lives anyway. We don't need an automated
exactly.
computer to tell us that we're idiots. Like, this is not necessary.
Right. We invented a computerized version of that guy you work with.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so let me help you. Yeah.
All right. Well, what do you think? Was Clippy an awful idea or just ahead of his time? What's your verdict, Dana?
I think it was directionally correct, but coming at the problem from the wrong end. And I don't think that, and I also think all this social engineering stuff, I think that was hitting on a live wire about humans. And
Mm,
they discovered the hard way, to your point, that if you have something that acts like a human, I mean, it looks like a human, but doesn't act like a human, people really dislike that, especially if they lack any kind of empathy, understanding, ability to learn. That's going to really irritate people. But I think it's a
that lack all
shame
the
that,
things that make humans human.
but there's probably about three things they could have done differently to probably make it a lot more effective. And probably Clippy wouldn't be hanging in effigy right now, or I don't know, clipped onto a piece of paper or turned into ball bearings. But
Yeah.
so I would say it was technology that sucked. There's no doubt about it. But I think it's an interesting case study of a bad idea that was a bad idea that they continued to push as a bad idea until they realized it was a bad idea, which they probably could have
Right.
probably done that at the beginning and realized this is a bridge too far, but they just plowed ahead because the developer knows best, right? That was the time.
That's right.
So the question is was it the developer who was running unfettered? I feel like I can only imagine the developers are all like, this is never going to work. Like, I just have this
Right.
feeling that rank and file developers, like, this is a stupid idea. There just seem to
Yeah, you're probably right.
be, I think it's, a product manager or marketing people who think that they understand, the persona and the users that
Hmm.
that I think I mean, I honestly, I think if you told a developer what was needed, they probably would have said, well, skip the hokey little clip
Right.
guy and make an adaptive agent using Bayesian or adaptive Bayesian logic, and then have these things so it learns that you
Right. That
cache the
is, in
learning.
fact, what the experts did say to do.
Yeah, and then they didn't listen, right? But I think that wasn't the
Yeah.
developers. I think it was a lack of, which is very common, a lack of user empathy, of really not
Yes.
understanding that, which I think was very common at that time. Like, well, this is just the way the
Yes.
software works, and we're deciding for you because we're Microsoft or we're whoever, we're Apple. And then what other choice did you have, right?
Right.
And now
Co-
with,
companies have,
but
companies have gotten a lot better uh, at assuming that the user will be able to getting the like level of abstraction right for the launch of a software product where we know we have a good idea of what our target users will be able to conceptualize and what we might need to hold their hand for, right? But
mhm,
the mentality that I think was prevalent in Microsoft in the '90s was one where if somebody doesn't, you know, this computer is all new to people, and they're like babies.
yeah,
They're kind of like children who don't understand, and we need to give them a
we have to dump,
fluffy or a
we have to dumb it
friendly.
down, right? We have to dumb it
Right.
down for, right,
Right.
which is
Um,
kind of ridiculous. Yeah.
which we don't want and have never wanted.
In fact, just do away with all UIs. I think that's just unnecessary. Like,
I mean, don't threaten me with a good time.
that's right, right. I think again, the human machine interface is a very complicated thing, but the minute you kind of go through that social behavioral circuit, you're in a whole another complicated uh, irrational world that no one will ever really model. But
Hmm.
we have
Yeah.
systems that do a good job of mimicking that today. Um, they make it,
Right.
like I
We could
said,
go.
it'll sound good, but it doesn't mean it is any good, which is, I think,
We could.
problematic. In a way, at least then people could say,
Yeah.
this technology sucks. I think that, the modern LLMs and these kinds of things are actually a little more hazardous because people don't know how much they suck. That's another
Right.
podcast, but I think that this one, at least, it was a clear delineation that this is not what users wanted, um,
Yeah,
and so
I
it was
I
a
think you're
clear.
dead on about the LLMs being much more dangerous here. It gives me a little hope that the reproduction of the NAS art the NAS experiment, the politeness experiment,
Mhm.
no longer works. It gives me some hope that in some number of years people will stop thinking of ChatGPT as a friend or comrade or colleague who helps them do things, but as just a
I
computer
don't
that spits
know.
out answers to
I
yeah,
don't know that. I think you are very optimistic.
yeah.
Uh,
That's me,
I would hope.
optimistic
I would
old
hope you
Dan.
were right. I'd hope you're right. But people still say please and thank you, and probably add 2% to the world's carbon footprint by being polite to. And it's
Yeah,
saying don't do that. Don't say thank you. It just you know runs
yeah.
1,000 computers
Still
for.
early days. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. You and I can meet back up in a as as
In the old folks' home.
soldiers in the
Yeah.
machine in the human resistance to the machine
Right.
takeover
Right. No,
in a few
I
years,
think
and we'll discuss it then.
I think that there is this social aspect to it where it's becoming hard now to differentiate between the machine and human generated stuff. And I think that's going to be
Yeah,
a more difficult problem to solve because people can mistake, like you said, we're kind of wired to believe things that sound like it came from another human, even if it's complete
right.
balderdash. So at least this is a more clear, but I think the human,
At least nobody thought Clippy was actually a person.
well, I think the irritation was that I think people inside had a little bit of an expectation that it would be like a person. And I think they were
Mhm.
disappointed and angry because they saw this
Yeah,
friendly thing and they thought this is going to be helpful. And then immediately it was your college roommate. I guess you said his name was Jeff, but
yeah,
poor
Jeff.
Jeff, you know,
He was really
that really
nice.
unhelpful friend that then when you see, you kind of try to avoid, you kind of cross the street. And if you're in a bar, you duck behind oh shit, here comes Jeff. Sorry,
Yeah,
Jeff, you really get picked on today, but we love you. We love you.
I love Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
Who
I
doesn't?
could do
I
things
mean,
myself. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dana, for taking this bizarre journey with me.
yeah,
You've been an excellent guest.
thank you. I
Uh,
really have thought a lot about a lot of other helpful systems. We could save this for another thing, but I'm thinking we talked a little bit about
Great.
the controls in your car and how the heat
Yeah,
is managed in your car as one. I've been thinking of all the ways of helpful technology that becomes very unhelpful at various times,
that's
making
great. Keep
disappointing
emailing me. I
thousands of
got.
engineers. But it's like, hey, man, like,
Not everything. I think. Well, we can. This is another conversation, but my position is that all or almost all of the problems, the like substantive social problems that can be solved with by adding more technology have already been solved, and we're left
hmm,
with ones that can't.
that's an
Anyway,
interesting thought.
I'll have to use that one. Um, anyway, listeners, it makes me so happy that you listen. And it would make me even happier if you would pop into our podcast app and give this show a 5-star review, as you know it deserves. And of course, tell your friends about the show too. Your friends will like it just as much as you do. Don't be greedy and keep this show to yourself. The kick-ass theme music that you're hearing right now is by Magic Al. Check out magicalmusic.bandcamp.com. I've been your host, Dan Sliman. See you next week for more Technology Blows.